Here at the Canadian Club, we have always been a forum for public figures, thought leaders, and decision makers to share their ideas and inform the most relevant and compelling conversations of our time.
We are dedicated to encouraging debate on the issues that matter to this city, this province, and this country.
The Canadian Club is one of the most important podiums anywhere in the world that a Canadian can speak to, tell Canadians what it is that they think, develop those thoughts. And so I want to thank you for that very, very much.
Please join me in thanking our esteemed panelists today.
Through our programs and events, including our youth and young leaders programs, our diversity partnerships, our joint events, and our media and social media opportunities, we offer you access to dynamic political, social, and business figures from abroad and right here at home.
The platform from which the eloquence of Canada has flowed all of that time, whether it be business, education, politics, sports, arts, and culture. If someone wants to say something to Canadians about this country and about the future of this country, this is the venue you choose.
Good morning. Good morning, Canadian Club members and guests. I hope you've had a time, the opportunity to catch up with some old friends and possibly make some new ones as well over breakfast. My name is Joseph Lowe, President of Canadian Club Toronto, and I am delighted to be your host today. I appreciate those who have joined us online this morning as well, thanks to the AV services of Van Valkenburg Communications and livemeeting.ca. When you participate in a Canadian Club event, it's guaranteed to be an interactive experience, so we certainly want to hear from all of you, whether you're here in the room or joining us online. So what questions do you have for Ontario's Minister of Finance? If you have a question for the Minister, please jot it down on the Q&A cards that you'll find at your tables, and if you're online, do hit the Submit a Question button on the right-hand side of your screen, and we'll get your questions that way as well. We are deeply appreciative of the generous sponsorship provided by CPA Ontario, Bruce Power, PwC, and TD, whose representatives are part of our head table today. Thank you for making this event possible. And thank you to our season sponsor, Canadian Bankers Association, for their continuing support as well. I would also like to welcome a table of young leaders sponsored by Simon Dwyer from Bell Canada. These students are joining us from Toronto Metropolitan University's Leadership Lab. Guys, stand up and be recognized. And lastly, I would like to thank Canada's Forest Trust, an ESG company planting smart forests to take action on climate change with the power of nature. I'm pleased to share that our partnership will reduce the carbon footprint of our entire season of Canadian Club Toronto events. And now at this time, I would like to invite Carol Wilding from CPA Ontario to introduce our speakers of the day.
Thank you, Joseph, and good morning, everyone. Thanks to the Canadian Club for having us here today. I'm not sure how many of you have been at these 7:30 breakfasts. We're all probably a little bit out of the habit of them, but it's great to be back in full swing. It is my pleasure to have the opportunity to introduce today's speaker. As Minister of Finance, the Honourable Peter Bethlenfalvy knows the benefit that CPAs bring to decision-making, as well as the critical knowledge, analytical skills, and ethical mindset that our profession is known for. Those qualities of value creation and looking to the long term have never been more important, especially during times of uncertainty. Those qualities of value creation and looking to the long term are the most important as we face very uncertain economic times. This morning, we are fortunate to be joined by someone who understands the challenges and the opportunities for Ontario in the current economic context. When he last joined the Canadian Club almost a year ago, he had just released his 2021 Ontario Fall Economic Statement, and he shared with us his ambitious plan to build Ontario. And 5 months ago, he introduced a plan that will see Ontario through uncertainty to better days ahead. In the province's 2020 budget, the minister recognized the necessity of planning for the short term while building for the long term. It prioritized getting shovels in the ground on key infrastructure projects, connecting the province through highways, public transit, and broadband. The budget also recognizes that environmental and sustainability commitments are driving global supply chains and investment directions. As ESG continues to change the way that businesses make strategic decisions, CPA Ontario's members continue to lead the way by helping organizations develop their own ESG plans. We are playing our part in making this province a leader in green manufacturing. The government's plan also recognizes many of the challenges our members are hearing from their clients firsthand. For example, the rising cost of living. In recognition that prices were going up, the Ontario government provided additional tax relief for low-income workers and families. And it introduced tax credits for everything from home care and home renovations for seniors to job training for workers. With these new supports available, CPAs are helping people from all walks of life develop their ineffective tax plan. At a time when people are feeling the pressure on their household budgets, taking full advantage of tax credits and benefits can be an all-important source of financial support for many. And finally, with so many good jobs going unfilled, the government's plan is making skills training a priority. This is a critically important initiative and one that CPA Ontario strongly supports. Our members are working closely with their clients to address ongoing labour shortages and supply chain issues, particularly in the skilled trades. Tradespeople, developers, and contractors rely on our membership to support them with business planning so they can focus on the business of building our homes, our hospitals, our highways, and our public transit. With the province providing an economic and fiscal update in the coming days, I'm sure we're all very keen to hear what the minister has to say today. However, we also see that the global economy is facing strong headwinds. Growth projections are slowing, the war in Europe continues, interest rates are rising, and inflation is still top of mind for families and economists alike. We know that in these challenging times, it has never been more important to have a plan. I applaud the minister for putting forward a plan to support our economy with ambitious infrastructure investments, training supports, and an environment that encourages investment and job creation. Ontario's 100,000 chartered professional accountants are here to provide their insights, their expertise, and their strategic thinking as we navigate these challenging times together. So please join me in a warm welcome for the Honourable Peter Bethlenfalvy, Ontario's Minister of Finance.
Well, thank you, Carol, and good morning, everyone. It's great to be here again, and I'm always amazed that people come out to hear me speak, particularly on a Monday morning, raining, post-COVID, so thank you. And you're probably wondering about the color of the tie. No, I didn't get a text from Jagmeet Singh saying, have you changed your affiliation? No, it's a different type of day today. It's Halloween, and that's a very scary thought. Both ideas are very scary. You know, over the past couple of years, our province, along with the rest of the world, faced a challenge unlike any other that we have seen in our lifetimes. The once-in-a-generation COVID-19 pandemic tested our resolve as a people and as a province. But we stood together and supported one another to get through those tough times. And today, we are navigating another challenge. Ontario, like the rest of the world, is facing challenging economic times. Et aujourd'hui, nous devons surmonter d'autres difficultés. L'Ontario, comme le reste du monde, fait face à une situation économique difficile. The province's economic recovery from the pandemic has been uneven. Despite progress in recent quarters, the real GDP in some industries that were hardest hit by that pandemic remains below pre-COVID levels. This includes the arts, entertainment and recreation, transportation and warehousing, and accommodation and food services, among others. Whereas other industries, such as retail, trade, and finance, as well as insurance, have seen GDP rise to well above pre-COVID levels. At the same time, and I'm sure everyone in the room is acutely aware of this one, our economic recovery has happened against a backdrop of rising inflation. In 2022, consumer price inflation in Ontario reached a near 40-year high. And I'm old enough to remember those times in the early 80s. En même temps, et je suis certain que tout le monde ici en est parfaitement conscient, notre reprise économique a eu lieu sur fond d'inflation grimpante. En 2022, l'inflation des prix à la consommation en Ontario a presque atteint un sommet en 40 ans. We are suffering from high inflation because, clearly, of a number of consequences, post-worldwide pandemic, and of course, Russia's illegal war on the Ukraine, which has caused supply disruptions for various industries, impacting commodity markets and further fueling inflation. While inflation eased slightly in September, the Bank of Canada, as you know, increased interest rates another 50 basis points last week. And the cost of groceries and other everyday goods continue to remain stubbornly high. Taken together, the next couple of years are likely to be marked by ongoing economic turbulence and challenges. Understandably, people are feeling uneasy about their household budgets and finances. So what are governments going to do about this? How can governments support economic recovery and growth in a time of so many unknowns? The answer is that governments need to be agile, with a sensible and responsible plan to respond to any risks or challenges. In short, governments need to be prepared during these challenging economic times, and that is exactly what our government is doing. As the inflationary clouds began to form last year, our government weighed many options for supporting workers and families. And instead of delivering broad, one-time support that risked worsening inflation, we introduced targeted measures that we could build over the long term, maintaining our flexibility as we navigated emerging economic challenges. To help keep costs down for families in March, we eliminated license plate stickers and refunded drivers who had already paid the cost. And I want to thank my fellow colleague, MPP Graham McGregor, for starting that applause. Graham's the member from Brampton North, and thank you for being here, Graham. That was a move that is saving drivers an average of $120 in Southern Ontario and $60 in Northern Ontario per year. And one of the most effective measures we introduced was cutting the gas tax rate by 5.7 cents per litre and the fuel tax rate by 5.3 cents per litre for 6 months. To help rebuild the economy, we have taken a province that was losing thousands of manufacturing jobs and have positioned it to become an electric vehicle battery manufacturing powerhouse. We're seizing our critical mineral opportunity and developing the Ring of Fire, a strategic necessity for Canada. And Carol mentioned my fall economic statement from November of 2021, so a year ago. And in that mini budget, we talked about opening up the far north, the road, the Ring of Fire, the road to the north. And as part of our government's critical mineral strategy, we call it the Corridor of Prosperity, the roads to the Ring of Fire, because these roads will help bring critical minerals to the manufacturing hubs in Southern Ontario, Eastern Ontario, prosperity as well to the north of Ontario, so all of Ontario will prosper with our critical mineral strategy. Through strong and prudent economic management, we can attract investment and restore our leadership in steel, in manufacturing, and other industries. And now, in order to attract more investment for these industries, we need skilled workers. We have also provided support for thousands of workers to train for rewarding careers in skilled trades. Workers who can help build the critical infrastructure our government is investing in all across Ontario. And this flexible, measured, and sensible approach is supporting Ontarians and leaving the government room to build on as we navigate these emerging challenges. Now, I will provide an update on the next steps for our plan to build when I table the 2022 Fall Economic Statement on Monday, November 14th. Je ferai le point sur la prochaine étape de notre plan pour bâtir le lundi 14 novembre lorsque je présenterai l'énoncé économique de l'automne 2022. As governments navigate the short-term economic challenges, they cannot forget about planning for the future. This is why the Fall Economic Statement will expand on our government's long-term plan for Ontario. I say long-term because that's exactly how governments need to be thinking right now. In the face of persistent inflation and more economic turbulence on the horizon, it's critical that governments promote stability by remaining flexible, responsive, and thinking long-term. We simply cannot ignore fiscal challenges and embark on a massive program spending of economic stimulus and growing deficits. This will only worsen inflation at this critical time. After unprecedented spending in response to the pandemic, now is the time for governments to show restraint. More spending today will only make inflation more painful and drag out an economic downturn. And as we have seen in the UK recently, irresponsible fiscal policy isn't just an abstract risk. It hurts workers and families. So in our Fall Economic Statement, we will take a different, more fiscally prudent and responsible approach. For workers, families, and businesses, uncertainty is unfortunately a fact of life right now. Our government recognizes the strain that this is causing people and businesses. And over these past few years, uncertainty on many fronts has tested us all. And the people of Ontario are now feeling the burden of continued uncertainty. The global economy will continue to see growth slow in the near term. And Ontario, my friends, is not an island. We will not be immune to it. But I'm confident in our fundamentals. I'm confident in our workers, and I'm confident in our plan to build Ontario. So one thing I am sure of is this. It's the strength and resilience of the people of this province. We have a strong plan to build infrastructure, train workers, and restore our manufacturing capacity while keeping costs down for people and businesses. Et s'il y a une chose dont je ne doute pas, c'est de la force et de la résilience de la population de cette province. Nous nous sommes dotés d'un plan solide pour bâtir des infrastructures, former des travailleurs et retrouver notre capacité de fabrication, tout en gardant les coûts bas pour notre population et nos entreprises. The economic challenges will not be an easy road ahead, but by being flexible and demonstrating restraint together, we can overcome any challenges that come our way. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your opening remarks. Depending on any given day, I guess, the headlines read, we're in an era of high inflation, high interest rates. We've heard all of this mentioned this morning. Interest rates making their way through the economy, of course. You had mentioned some of the measures to protect the province and how to prepare the province. What have you learned, I guess, over the course of the past few years that can perhaps help prepare the province for an economic downturn?
Well, thank you, Larysa, and it's good to be with you here today. And you know, I've learned a number of things. First off, inflation, which we haven't really seen these levels of inflation since the early '80s, and these interest rates. I mean, inflation got to 12%, and interest rates got to 20%. Think about that for context. So many people are seeing this level of inflation and these levels of interest rates for the first time in their lives. And the other thing is, it's hurting a lot of people. It's hurting a lot of people when you go to the gas pumps, when you go to the grocery store, when you're paying rent or you're paying your mortgage costs. So that's where governments need to have a plan. And I'm very proud of our government for moving quickly. Early this year, we moved to, as I mentioned, to lower gas prices for 6 months. We moved to take away those license plate stickers. And by the way, those license plate fees by the previous government went up dramatically, up to $120 per vehicle. Taking that away and taking the burden off the 8 million drivers in this province was a critical move. But we've done a lot more than that. We've increased the minimum wage as recently as October 1st to $15.50. That's the second highest provincial minimum wage in the country. We also, in that budget that we just recently passed, and by the way, we took that budget to the people of Ontario on June 2nd, transparently, fully costed out, full approval from the Auditor General, that the numbers all worked, and I was very happy about that as the Finance Minister, let me tell you that, is the low individual and family tax credit, which means that low-income workers in Ontario pay the lowest personal income tax in the country. That puts more money back in their pockets. And then, of course, we continue to do things like the staycation tax credit for many who traveled in Ontario and stayed at an Ontario bed and breakfast, an Ontario hotel, can get up to $400 back per family when they file their income taxes in a few months. So we're very mindful of the uneven impacts of high interest rates and high inflation on many. And we've taken measures in the past. They continue to take effect now. And we've got measures that are coming into force through this tax year, and will continue to be there for the people of Ontario.
Minister, I have a few topics here for discussion this morning, but as I understand it, the Canadian Club will be collecting questions or topics for discussion from all of you. You had mentioned the UK in your opening remarks, and former Bank of Canada Governor, Bank of England Governor Mark Carney recently spoke to the Senate and suggested that policymakers in Canada could learn something based on the economic challenges that the UK has seen over the past 6 weeks. What can you take away from that?
Well, very clearly, the markets will punish mistakes. And when fiscal policy works at cross purposes to monetary policy, markets are swift to render their verdict. And that's why having a prudent plan, I think, is so critical. Tabling that budget back in April and getting elected with, by the way, a larger majority than we had the first term. And you know how difficult that is to do. The last premier to get a larger majority with the same size legislature was Howard Ferguson from Kemptville, Ontario in 1929. That's how hard it is to get not only a second majority, but a larger one at that. And so taking that transparent plan to the people of Ontario and having a path forward, saying that there's things that we can do to get through whatever is around the corner. So for example, Carol mentioned a lot of the infrastructure that we're building. You know, getting infrastructure done, I've seen too many governments over the years just talk and set up another task force and another committee and another panel, another report. And if you ever watch the show Yes Minister, you know what that's all about. You know, in the fullness of time. No, our view is to get it done right now. So we put shovels in the ground. For example, since the election, just a few highlights. We put shovels in the ground for the Hazel-McCallion line in Mississauga. We put shovels in the ground in East Hamilton at the Confederation site to start building the Hamilton Light Rail. We've put shovels in the ground. I was with the Premier out in Scarborough, where they've talked about a subway for 50 years. 50 years, 700,000 people have not had a subway out to a core part of our city. So our philosophy is, you know, not only to put out the plan, the people voted on that plan, but now to get it done. Put those shovels in the ground, get going, put the hardworking Ontario workers who support their families to work, and get it done.
Let's talk about fiscal year end. Your government recently announcing a surplus of $2.1 billion. Word on the street is that you're going to put that money towards Ontario's net debt, although there have been some suggestions that that money could be better used in healthcare or education. What do you say to that argument?
Well, to be clear, the surplus was for the last fiscal year, and we put it to the accumulated debt. For sure. And if you look at our plan again, I'm sure many of you have read the 241 pages of my budget. But just in case you're a little rusty on some of the facts there, we put unprecedented and historic investments in our healthcare system. I mean, just look at the previous fiscal year, over $5 billion increase in investments in healthcare and long-term care. Again, in this budget, $5.6 billion. It's over $10 billion. No government in history has dedicated more funds and increases for our healthcare system. And why are we doing that? Because we inherited a system that doesn't work, a system that doesn't have enough hospitals, that doesn't have enough long-term care beds, that doesn't have enough healthcare workers, nurses and personal support workers, doesn't have enough family doctors. You know, these are the things, these are facts, it's not ideology. So we're making those investments to make sure that we're not just building but for today, but for tomorrow. And let me give you a quick example. I saw, there he is, Mohamed Lashemi. You know, about 3 years ago, at least, he said, Peter, let's support a new medical school. Let's create the first one in 50 years. Let's do it. And Toronto Metropolitan University championed a new medical school in Brampton. And we said yes. We said yes because it's math again. We just don't have enough family doctors in this province. You need solutions. So we approved that. I think I approved it a year and a half ago in the budget of 2021. Merrick Gertler at U of T said, how about a new medical school in Scarborough? And we said yes. So we have a new medical school going up in Scarborough. First one in 100 years in Toronto. We've got a new program out of Durham, my region, where Queen's University, under Jane Philpott's leadership, and Lakeridge Health, the hospital network in Durham, are partnering in an innovative medical program solely for family physicians. So when you stream in, you stick to family medicine. You know, I mean, there's a bit of self-interest. I'm getting a little older. Many of you are aging too. We need, for the people of Ontario, to have enough family doctors. So we are making historic investments in healthcare. And the other thing I'll say is, and you've heard this from the Premier, and he's shown tremendous leadership in this regard. Folks, throwing more money at it isn't the solution, the only part of the solution. The status quo is no longer acceptable. We have to find different ways, along with the healthcare system, working in partnership with them, to deliver healthcare in the ways that are sustainable for the future. We have 2.6 million people in this province over the age of 65. Another 2 million going to join them over the next 20 years. We have to build the healthcare system for tomorrow, and we can't rely on the status quo of today.
You mentioned the word math. Let's get into some math. The Financial Accountability Office of Ontario recently suggested that Ontario will see surpluses for the next 6 years. They've also suggested that the government has tens of billions of dollars that is unallocated. Can you explain the difference in numbers?
Oh, for sure, for sure. First off, you know, the thing I'll acknowledge right up front is that we are in uncertain times, and many people are, as I said earlier, challenged with the high cost of just about everything in this environment. So that's why I mentioned all the things that we have been doing, continue to do, and will do to help many people and businesses get through these challenging times. The FAO report is very much based on speculation. It doesn't incorporate a recession, which may or may not happen. And of course, we are in the business of making sure that we deliver government priorities. And that's why, as I mentioned, I'm tabling my fall economic statement on November 14th, where I'll put out the numbers of the government and less speculation, more actual numbers about what we're doing and how we're doing against our plan. You know, it's an environment that I haven't seen. I've been in business. I was just mentioning with my old colleague Riaz Ahmed here from TD. You know, when I started in 1987, on a Monday, the stock exchange went down in October 22%. 22%. So I've seen a lot of ups and downs in the market, and one thing that's absolutely necessary in that environment is to make sure that not only you have a plan of how you're going to move the province forward, how you're going to use taxpayer money for the betterment of today's generation and tomorrow's generation, it's also important to have contingencies in place. It would be imprudent not to have contingencies in place, whether the pressures materialize in our capital program, in our healthcare system, in our education system, in our social services system, in our post-secondary system. A government that is thoughtful, prudent, and responsible is what I think the people of Ontario want, and that's what we're delivering.
Thank you, Minister. I was just handed a few questions from the audience, some that incorporate some of the topics that we're about to get into. Let's talk about this fall economic statement that you are set to table November 14th. The Federal Finance Minister, Chrystia Freeland, of course, tabling the fall economic statement this week. You have mentioned, and we have heard this morning, high inflation, high interest rates, depending on who you talk to. We're either in a recession or headed for a recession. You've mentioned the word infrastructure. We haven't talked about housing yet. What is top of mind for you when it comes to this fall economic statement? What does that priority list look like?
Well, that's a great question. You know, you touched on housing. So that's one of the areas that we're very focused on. You saw last week we tabled a plan to build 1.5 million homes over the last 10 years. And I think back to my upbringing, my parents from Hungary during World War II. And I met my mother and her brother, my grandparents, but also 3 great-grandparents. And they all lived under one roof. And they came to this great country. They got, you know, bombs and bullets overhead. They made their way through Sweden to Canada, and they were able to find a house, and they all lived under that roof. They were able to find jobs. They were able to raise a family, put their son through university, and here he is as the Minister of Finance in Ontario. To me, that's the Canadian dream. That's what we should offer every single person that lives in this country, the opportunity to have a home, to have the ability to raise a family, to be able to put their children through school, to make sure they're safe. And I want to make sure that our government wants to make sure that families have that same opportunity. That's why the housing plan is so critical that we tabled last week. You mentioned infrastructure. As the fall economic statement is tabled, I intend to give an update on how our infrastructure is coming along. As I said, we're putting shovels in the ground right across the province. We're also getting investments like we've never seen in a long time into the province for the manufacturing of electric vehicles. I mean, over $14 billion just for electric vehicles. That's capital that's coming into this province. That's creating fantastic jobs, bigger paychecks. I mentioned in my remarks the critical minerals. You know, Russia's got them, China's got them, and we in Ontario have them. And when security of supply is so critical in this global environment, we've got them right here. So we're opening up the north through the Ring of Fire. I called it the Corridor of Prosperity. Those are good jobs. We're doing it with First Nations. We've got the lithium, we've got the cobalt, we've got the graphite, we've got the nickel. And you're seeing investments come back to Canada. That also helps the supply chain going into battery manufacturing, which will power the electric vehicles, and we are going to be the epicenter of electric vehicle car and battery manufacturing here in Ontario and here in Canada. And I'll go a step further. We recently announced that we're investing along with the federal government to help Algoma transform their coal-fired steel plant in Sault Ste. Marie to electricity. Doing the same thing in Hamilton, a coal-fired plant. We still have coal as an input in parts of our economy, going to be transferring into electricity, the Dofasco plant in Hamilton. And to power all that electricity, so our electricity demands, because of our success, is going up and up and up. We announced that we're looking at Pickering Nuclear Station for an extra year, and asking if we can, subject to the Canadian Nuclear Safety Commission, whether we can refurbish Pickering, which is 14% of Ontario's electricity footprint. Clean, safe, reliable energy to power the economy of the future. 94% of our electricity footprint in Ontario is clean right now. But we have more to do. We want to get to 100%. We want to convert the private sector industry off of different forms of fossil fuels to electricity, and that's all part of our plan. So that was a long answer to a short question. We're going to update the people of Ontario on how we're doing in the fall economic statement, as well as targeted supports. I mentioned in my remarks, now's not the time to open up the checkbook and broad-based supports. You've heard the federal finance minister say the same thing. But targeted supports are necessary to help those most vulnerable, and we continue to always monitor the environment to help those who need help.
I'm going to ask a really long question now. The federal budget, still a few months away. Of course, pre-budget consultations underway. A question from the audience, from John Ecker. What measures do you want taken at the federal level to help the provinces? And I guess on the heels of that, what's most important for you in terms of shared responsibility between the province and the federal government? What will you be looking for?
Yeah, I'll start off by saying I have a very good and constructive relationship with Chrystia Freeland, and we believe in the same things of making the Ontario and Canadian economy stronger. So one of the important elements of any dialogue with the federal government is the critical minerals and the infrastructure in the north. You heard recently Chrystia Freeland talk about the security of supply, and we have that right here in Ontario. So it's time to, we put up $1 billion for the infrastructure. We're calling on the federal government to do the same, to match that investment in the far north. Another area would be, and it's been reported recently about the Canada Health Transfer. We have been lobbying the federal government for a couple of years to come to the table to talk about health for all Canadians. And the time is now. When Medicare was set up in the 70s, it was a 50-50 cost share. Now it's a 22-78 cost share. We pay 78%. We need to have a dialogue to make sure that the funding is in place and is sustainable, because our healthcare system needs to be sustainable for the long run. And I've always said a healthy people leads to a healthy economy. The two go together.
Let's just expand on that health aspect. A question from the audience. We thank you for your topics and your questions. Mental needs of Ontarians has been on the rise. The government invested significantly in innovative Made in Ontario, but the needs keep growing. Will there be further supports addressed in your upcoming fiscal plans?
So on the area of mental health and addictions, one of the that's been a priority for me. One of my political mentor was Michael Wilson. I was on his campaign team in the 80s in his riding association, and man, he had a work ethic. I had to pick him up at 7:30 in the morning. I didn't get up till 9 back then. So that was really tough. He really taught me the work ethic to knock on doors, to hand out flyers and what have you. And tragically in 1995, his son committed suicide. And so he became a champion for mental health. He was impacted. And that was a time when people didn't really talk about it. You just saw recently a federal MP talk about his challenges with mental health. And I had the fortune to join Michael Wilson's family. Michael Wilson passed away in February 2019. I had the fortune of joining his family for the unveiling of his bust at CAMH, the Center for Addiction and Mental Health. Just a week, I think about a week and a half ago, 2 weeks ago, a week and a half ago. And so it's the efforts of people like Michael Wilson and many, many, many others, including, I was mentioning it earlier at my table, that I did a trip with True Patriot Love, a trek to the magnetic North Pole, and I think I see Tim Hodson somewhere there, who is a big champion of True Patriot Love and supporting those soldiers with post-traumatic stress disorder. I was in New York for 9/11. I lived in New York for 15 years. I was right there in Manhattan when it happened, the day it happened. And the memory I have is all those first responders going to help people in danger. Many lost their lives that day. Those who didn't suffered consequences, mental health, post-traumatic stress disorder. And we as civilians, how do you connect and support that? So that's just one example, a couple of examples of why I'm such a big champion for supporting mental health and addiction.
We have just a few minutes left. I'd like to pack it with a few more topics, if you will. From the audience, what more will be included to address Ontario's drive to net zero? We often talk about those targets. Can we make them? How plausible are they?
I should also mention, right beside Tim is Rocco Rossi. You went to the Himalayas for the first True Patriot Love trek. He gave me some great advice. He says, when you bring a sleeping bag, don't bring a Walt Disney sleeping bag. Bring something a little bit warmer than that. You know, I mentioned some of the net zero. We're very committed to that here in this province. There's different ways to get there. One way that we don't believe is the way to get there is with a punitive carbon tax. And I say that because we've seen in other jurisdictions like the US and Joe Biden, the Democratic president, show another path to net zero. I think a wiser path that just doesn't put the burden on the backs of hardworking families and businesses in Ontario. I mentioned the nuclear. We're putting a small modular reactor into Darlington. That's the equivalent of electricity for 300,000 homes. They've been on submarines and aircraft carriers for 30, 40 years. They're safe, they're reliable, and so we've started the process to get a shovel in the ground in Darlington. That'll be the first through GE Hitachi, proven technology that will get going. That will help our electricity grid. I mentioned converting coal-fired plants to electricity. I mentioned the electric vehicle. We'll have other things to say in the near term, but what I would say is this, is we're going to be relentless in rebuilding Ontario's economy with good manufacturing jobs, good paying jobs in the tech sector, and we'll do it in a way that makes sense for our environment.
A lot of events coming up in the next week or so. Federal Reserve set to make an announcement this week, and of course, we know whatever is happening in the U.S. really affects what happens here in Canada. We have yet to hear from the federal government on the fall economic statement, Ontario's fall economic statement. Given the current landscape, what is most important to you right now? I'm going to leave you with the final thought, leave the audience with the final thought and your final words.
You know, I've been in business a long time from the private sector, and as I mentioned earlier, I've seen a lot of economic cycles. You know, and we've got geopolitical risks, I think, that we haven't seen, certainly in my lifetime. We've just come through a pandemic that certainly we haven't seen in our lifetimes. There's global uncertainty. What I do feel confident about is Ontario in that environment. So whatever the challenges that may be around the corner, having a plan that focuses on infrastructure, that focuses on supporting labor, I put in over $1 billion for labor to do reskilling and retraining. Just the Skills Development Fund, $500 million in the last 2 years. That's 390,000 people in this province that have been reskilled and retrained for the jobs of tomorrow. That's so fundamental. So making sure that we have the labor to support the infrastructure. And then as I mentioned, making sure that we're rebuilding this economy that by attracting investments, both domestic and foreign, that build the economy of the future. I think our plan, which has prudence and responsibility built into it, is transparent, and I'll be updating in 2 weeks from today. The message that I want people to hear from me is that we have confidence. We have confidence in the people and businesses and the workers of Ontario, and regardless of what's around the corner, I'm confident we'll get through it together.
Minister, thank you kindly. Thank you kindly for your time and for your insight this morning.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Larysa.
Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Clint Thomas, Senior Manager of Government Relations at Bruce Power, and thank you, Minister Bethlenfalvy and Larysa, for a great discussion here on the challenges and opportunities facing Ontario today, and thank you to the Canadian Club once again for hosting yet another outstanding event. Always a pleasure to see you, Minister, as it was to work alongside you in government. Ontario is well served by your thoughtful and measured leadership. And as well, we appreciate that the government understands the vital role, as you've outlined here, the nuclear industry plays in providing clean, reliable electricity needed to keep us competitive. In Budget 2022, it actually devotes an entire section to Ontario's nuclear advantage and highlights Bruce Power's green bond issue last fall, which was a world first. So again, thank you, Minister. Bruce Power is proud to be leading Ontario's largest private infrastructure and clean energy project, our Life Extension Program, which is extending the life of 6 of our units. The program will secure an estimated 22,000 jobs directly and indirectly from operations and an additional 5,000 jobs annually throughout the investment program, injecting billions into Ontario's economy. As well, our Project 2030 will increase our site output by the end of the decade to 7,000 megawatts through refurbishment, asset optimization, and innovative technology. That's the equivalent of adding a 9th reactor to our site. The initial phase alone will result in a CO2 reduction equivalent to taking 100,000 cars off the road. All of this will ensure a reliable supply of carbon-free electricity to help the province reach its climate change goals, power economic activity through private sector investment, and enable the production of cancer-fighting medical isotopes for a global market that is expanding rapidly. We and our partners, including the Saugeen and Ojibwe Nation, just started commercial production of lutetium-177 at our site, and there is much more to come on that front, I assure you. We are proud to help power Ontario forward through these complex and challenging economic times, as the Minister has alluded to, and we're honored to have been a part of today's event. So thank you very much. Happy Halloween to you all, and wish you a great rest of your day.
Thank you so much, Clint. Before I send you all off to get on with your day, I'd like to let you know about a few of the upcoming events that we have for the balance of November. This Thursday, November 3rd, Robert F. Smith, founder and chairman and CEO of Vista Equity Partners, will be joining us at the podium. This is a unique opportunity to hear from one of the top tech investors in the world. Then on Wednesday, November 16th, the CEO of the TMX Group, John McKenzie, will be here. And on November 24th, Anthony Osler, CEO of Canadian Bankers Association, will again join us to help celebrate the CBA's 130th anniversary. Please plan to attend by visiting our website at canadianclub.org. You'll find more details there. Finally, I'd like to say thank you once again to our event sponsors, CPA Ontario, Bruce Power, PwC, and TD for making our event possible today. Thank you very much. Our vision here at the Canadian Club, and I know we're kind of making our way here, our vision at the Canadian Club is to be the podium of choice for relevant and provocative conversations connecting the business community and promoting an inclusive and prosperous Canada. We want every event to deliver on this promise. Thank you so much, everyone. We'll see you again soon.